Today I'm going to talk about feature plugins for WordPress, the second part of an essential customizations talk I gave at WordCamp this year. These slides are available on my website, shoeflydesign.org, at this URL. So a little introduction. My name is Joe Chelman. I'm a web developer and author. I've put out many video courses on JavaScript, WordPress, Drupal, many different things, which you can find at lynda.com and O'Reilly. I've also written a book, which you can find at Peach Pit Press on Macaw. But today we're going to talk about WordPress. Okay, first let's get the jargon out of the way. We're talking about feature plugins. What is that? A feature plugin is a custom plugin for your unique site. Okay, but what is a feature plugin actually for? It's for any customizations that are independent of the active theme. In this sense, feature plugins are like cousins of child themes. They're the first place that you would go to make basic customizations on any WordPress site. For me, feature plugins are where all customizations should go if you don't have a specific reason to include them in the theme. Pretty much anything that you can do in a theme in WordPress, you can do in a plugin, and usually it's a good idea to do that so that you're not tied to the specific theme if you need to make a change. And there are other reasons for this as well that we'll go over. Okay, now let's talk about a few examples of the kinds of customizations you might want to make. The first is creating or changing custom post types, taxonomies, and so forth. Many themes will include custom post types and sometimes custom taxonomies, that is, custom categories, as well. But if you change that theme, any posts that you've created that are in that custom post type could appear to be lost, and that's a real bummer. So it's always a good idea to define your custom post types in the form of a plugin. You can also take anything that was defined in a theme and strip it out, putting it in a plugin. You can also modify the post queries that are made by WordPress core. So anytime you load a particular page on your site, say an archive page for a particular category or your front page, wherever it is, WordPress queries your database to pull whichever posts it needs to render that page. And there are filters that you can use and implement in a plugin that will modify those queries to do different things. So you can say, only show sticky posts when I look at the archive page for a particular category. Or you could exclude certain posts from particular archive pages. Or whatever you need to do, you can probably do it using the filters that are built into WordPress core and implement them in a feature plugin. You can also make changes to other plugins. So for example, WooCommerce is a plugin that has tons of actions and filters that let you change its behavior, so you don't have to touch any of the code in the plugin itself to make almost any customization that you need to do. This is how all of the extensions that are available for WooCommerce work. You can also use a feature plugin to disable any core features that you don't want. A really straightforward one is disabling the admin menu bar from certain pages or from the site entirely. Any features that you can conceivably want to disable temporarily and easily should probably go in a plugin. This is as opposed to putting things in the functions.php file in your WordPress theme, because the only way that you can disable those is by commenting the code out or just stripping it out and resaving the file. Whereas with plugins, you can turn off a particular plugin and everything else will still work. Your site will look the same and you can test it without that plugin enabled. All of these ideas support one general guideline, which is do not hack core. You never, ever want to touch any of the core WordPress files. And likewise, you don't want to modify other people's code. One of the beauties of open source is that you actually have the code in front of you and you could modify it. You can take those plugins and extend them, do whatever you want by actually touching the code. But generally, your intention is to use these plugins that you've downloaded from the repository or themes that you've downloaded from the WordPress theme repository. You're probably going to want to just keep using those going forward and be able to update them as the original author updates them. If you start making modifications to them yourself, actually modifying the code of those plugins or of WordPress core or whatever, you have to keep track of that stuff, and then you have to reapply all the updates that you make every time a new release comes out. And that just stinks. You don't want to do that. So by making the customizations that you want to make inside a plugin that you've created, it's completely independent of everything else. You can get the behavior that you need without having to hack anything. Okay, so how do you actually make a plugin? It's super simple. First, you make a folder. Then you make a PHP file inside that folder. You can name it pretty much anything you want. And then you implement what we call hooks, which are specially named functions. And they take the form in WordPress of actions and filters. You just create your functions, making sure to name them carefully inside your plugin file. And then you tell WordPress where to call your functions using actions and filters. Now we're going to switch over to a demo that shows how to actually do a couple of these things in the form of a real plugin. Okay, so I've loaded up a demo site that I'm running locally on my Mac. It's here at this fake address. And I have some stub content in here that came with WooCommerce. I also have some other full test data. So I can test all kinds of stuff on this little example site. Really good idea to have a local site that you can test your stuff on. If I switch over to the dashboard, I can see all the plugins I currently have installed and those that are active, of course. So now let's make one. Here in the Finder, I have my plugins folder for that WordPress site. I've created a folder, and inside that folder, I have a little PHP file. Let's open that. Here it is. I'm using Sublime Text as my text editor. You can use, of course, any old editor you want. So what I need to do is tell WordPress that this file is a plugin. I have a little text expander snippet that helps me with this. So I'm going to type WP plug, and that expands out into a little stub WordPress plugin. I'm going to remove all of this class stuff down here, and I'm just going to keep the comment. This works pretty much just the same way as in WordPress themes. It's just a little bit of metadata and a comment. So I'm going to give this plugin a name, call it my feature plugin. And you can leave off the URI if you want. I'm just going to give it a little example URL here. And this will be a few functions for trying out feature plugins. And I have my author and author URI set up as myself. Of course, you will want to change this to your own. Here's the version, the license, which is GPL2, just like WordPress itself. And then down here is the text domain, which is used for translating strings in your plugin. So this would usually be something similar to the name of your plugin, like my feature plugin, like this. Okay, so if I save this and switch back to WordPress, if I refresh my plugin page, there we go. Here is my feature plugin. I can activate it, and it's now loaded. Of course, it's not going to do anything because it doesn't have any actual functions inside, but I can see it and I can activate it. So this is good. Let's do a couple of quick little tweaks using some very simple filters. So the first one we'll look at is disabling the admin menu bar. This is one that you can see in the WordPress documentation. It's super easy. And the way all of these things work is you use either add filter or add action, which is a built-in WordPress function. And then the first argument is the filter that you want to implement. In this case, the filter is show admin bar. And then the second parameter is a function that will return the correct value. So with filters, usually you're passing in some data, which is modified and then passed back. In the case of show admin bar, as you'll see in the WordPress codex, all that you need to do is just return true or false. So let's call it my feature admin bar. So I'll copy this and create a new function. This can be above or below the add filter declaration, doesn't matter. So do it like this. And now I can just return false. All right. So I'll switch back to my site, refresh. And as you can see, we have a little problem here because I forgot a semicolon. Right. Switch back again and reload. There we go. So let me look at this from this side. And the admin bar disappears. It remains here in the administrative area because, of course, it's actually really useful here. But now, no matter where I go, the admin bar is gone. And depending on the editing strategy that you have on your WordPress site, this could be useful, or maybe you'd like to leave it. So if I change this to return true, it will always display. And you can also change the behavior. So if I want to display the admin bar if an administrator is logged in, but disable it for everybody else, I could change this up a little bit. I can use the current user can function and pass in the role that I want to check. So let's say I want to see if the current user is an administrator. So if I do this and the current user is an administrator, this function will return true. So I could just return the result of this and say, if the current user is an administrator, show the admin bar. That is, return true. So I should still see this because I am an administrator, and it works. So with this, we've implemented a super simple filter, put it in a feature plugin, and it does just what we want. Okay, let's take a look at one other filter. I said that you can modify how other plugins work as well. So let's modify how WooCommerce works. Here in Sublime Text, I've opened up the WooCommerce plugin folder. You can see all the files in here. And if we were working with customizations from a theme context, we'd be copying these different templates from the WooCommerce templates folder into our theme. But you can also make customizations in your plugin. So let's take a look, for example, at the archive product.php template. As you can see, this has a series of calls to do action and apply filters. These are the other side of the coin from add filter and add action. This is what plugin authors will include to let you actually make these customizations yourself. So let's say I wanted to add something before the main content on these product archive pages. So what I would do is add an action that implements this hook, WooCommerce before main content. So I'm going to copy this and switch back to my plugin. And I'm going to add an action. WooCommerce before main content. And now, of course, I need to say what I'm actually going to call this function that implements that hook. We'll stick with the same naming convention as before and go with my feature. Maybe I'll go WC before main content, like this. Just shorten it up a little bit. So I'll copy that function name, add a little space, and create that function here. Now this is just an action. There's nothing to filter here. So what I'm going to do is just add some content. So I can do it like this using a here doc. Let's say I want to print some sort of alert message. So I'll use those 3 less than signs followed by my token, close it off down here. And now anything inside there will just be directly printed out. So maybe I'd like to use this to print some sort of alert that the store is being worked on right now. So I could say, use caution, the store is being worked on right now. Very well. So save the plugin, switch back to the browser and refresh. And there we go. My message is printed in exactly the place where I want it to be, and I don't have to move any files around or touch any templates. Now, of course, there are many customizations that you could make in a theme as well. If there are things that are directly related to the presentation of the website, maybe that's where they belong. But knowing that you have the flexibility to put these either in themes or in a plugin gives you a lot more flexibility. And as I've said, I think that usually putting them in plugins is the better choice unless it's something that is very directly tied to the theme. So as you can see, implementing these actions and filters is really pretty easy. You do a lot of the same work in your functions.php file in your themes or child themes. But putting these customizations into a plugin makes it easy to disable if you need to test things. And it means that if you should switch themes, your customizations can still be there. If you want to learn more on how to create plugins for WordPress, I have a course for you. It's called Creating Plugins to Extend WordPress, and it's available from O'Reilly Video. Check it out. There's a link in the description, or you can click here on this screen. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you found that feature plugins are pretty easy to write and that you'll get started writing your own. You can find me at shoefly.us on the web or at shoeflydesign on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you.